record this. We'll share this recording after the webinar, as well as we'll send it out to everyone.
By the way, Sharon thinks he's getting full through the full deck today.
The
challenge is on. Go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, perfect. So I am going to get all this set up. So I'm just gonna work through this slide deck. We're gonna talk about automation, but again, feel free to chime in if anyone has any questions, anyone has anything they want to add. This is going to be a conversation because, like Kelly said, me and her don't know everything, right? So, we're here to have a conversation about automation. But in general, I'm really excited to talk about this topic and share some of these things we have in this presentation, because this is such an important topic, automating your firm or automating a lot of certain processes in your firm, because there's so much value that can come from it. But a lot of firms don't end up doing it, or they don't end up doing it enough because there are some challenges they face along the way. So we're going to talk about those benefits, those challenges, and that will actually go into my next slide. We're going to talk about those benefits. We're going to talk about those challenges, and we're going to share with you a framework that we designed after working with a lot of firms to help them overcome those challenges and much more easily implement automation, but not just implement it, but implement it successfully where their team actually uses it. And then we'll also talk a little bit about financial sense and some of the capabilities we built out in our solution that can help you do some of these things as well.
I'm going to interject because it is all about automation.
Yeah.
So I put into the chat if you use an online scheduler, because if you don't, that would be, so it's not all about financial sense, no matter how hard Sharon tries. And so if you don't have an online scheduler, go get one. And it takes less time to implement an online scheduler than it does to, book a meeting or two. It's really simple to implement. So make the 15 minutes to put that into your life and take it next step and implement a paywall behind it, attach it to your Stripe or your Square or whatever it is.
Oh, that's a good point.
Put it behind a paywall. And so that people aren't just picking your brain on stuff. I have even my clients' employees, if they need stuff, they've got to go through my paywall. And one last suggestion on that, if you have, so 15 minutes is free, and I manage that pretty tightly, and they have to answer questions on why they're meeting with me. So if it looks like it's just scammy, then I just cancel the meeting. A half-hour meeting will take almost as much out of your day as an hour meeting. So if your hour meeting is $200, make your half hour 150. So guard your time and have an online scheduler to automate all of this and to guard your time for you. Okay, carry on.
Okay, so let's jump into really what is automation. It's kind of like Kelly was just talking about, right? Automation is removing that manual process or the manual steps that go into completing a process. So in her example, scheduling meetings, right? Following with someone to ask when they're available, they send it back. It doesn't work. Going back and forth until you get something, manually putting that on your calendar. That's a manual process that can be automated with technology. And the great thing is accounting firms, more than most organizations, they have a lot of opportunities for automation because they do a lot of repetitive things like recurring work, like payroll, bookkeeping, or there's like requesting documents. There's a lot of repetitive processes in accounting firms. So there's a lot of opportunity to actually implement automation and drive a lot of value.
Don't forget the requesting documents again.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the endless chase for your documents, which I'll be sure to talk about that one because we can help you do that actually. So what are the benefits, right? There's a lot of benefits that go into automating your firm, but we're going to talk about these four because I think these are the most important. The biggest one is that it's going to save you a lot of time. If there's one thing I've learned working with accounting firms, they're always busy. There's never a good time. And, they're always, whether they're catching up to a deadline, they're trying to get caught up on their work. They really don't have enough time to focus on some of the more important things like growing their firm or spending time working on their business instead of in their business. There's actually
spending time with their dogs.
Yeah. Or spending time with your dogs, their loved ones, taking a vacation is important because if you don't, or take that quality time, you're going to burn out. It's not sustainable over the long term. I think So there was actually a study by Zero that said like 42% of accounting firms said their biggest struggle to growing their practice was they didn't have enough time. So, I mean, it just shows everywhere that saving time is such a benefit, and automation can help you do that, right? Because like we talked about, by automating your firm, you're going to be removing yourself from those manual, repetitive processes. That's going to allow you to have more time to focus on some of those things we we're just talking about. Two, that it's really going to help you improve work quality. So as you start to grow, I mean, even if it's just you, right? You may do the same thing over and over again, hundreds of times, but we are human. None of us are perfect. You might still make a mistake, even if it's a process you do over and over again. Especially if you're growing, right? You're hiring new people, you're onboarding new employees. They're taking over the work that you used to do. They're not as experienced. They're prone to making mistakes and with less experience, and it causes human error. You may catch those mistakes, which even if you do, that's going to delay the work getting done on time. Potentially, you may miss a deadline because something wasn't caught till the very end, or you don't catch the mistake, your client catches it. They're not happy with your work, right? And one of the most important aspect for accounting firms is to keep their clients happy so they can retain them, and they impress them so they drive referrals, which is the main growth engine typically for accounting firms.
Actually,
Go ahead.
I want to throw in something that people don't think about very often with automation. And so it is consistency, not just of the work, but of the communications that go out to the client. Yeah. Because if you, and I'm going to give you a real life example. I have a dog who has a death by coyote wish, and she just goes. She does not, and men have a voice that dogs listen to more awfully, but my husband has 12 names for her and never uses the right language to call her back. So she doesn't come back. Oh, wow. I say, Tippet, come, and she may what? Oh, she's sleeping. I say, Tippet, come, and she comes back. She knows how to respond to that. If you're sending out client communications that are somewhat different every time, you can be sending out mixed messages, or the client doesn't go, oh yeah, right. Do this, this, and this, and this is the language that you use, and this is the checklist that you use to get it done. So it's not just about our work, it's about getting the client to understand the communications that you're sending out, and automation makes that consistent.
Yeah, I want to add on to that. Like, consistency is so key, whether it's with the communication, whether it's the process your client follows. The more variation you have in a process, the more confused a client may get, the more work it may create for you in the long run, but also just consistent deliverables, consistent work as you scale, as you hire new people. That's the key to success, to keeping your clients happy across the board. So, and tech does that. Automating with technology will deliver consistent results every time, because you remove that human variation or that human error that could potentially happen. So the third point, it increases profitability, right? So we talked about how automating a lot of these repetitive processes can save you a lot of time. It can also save your team a lot of time. So with that extra time, you're going to be able to take on more clients, potentially, if that's what you choose to do with it. That will increase revenue, right? And the beautiful part about it is, if you're able to take on more clients and drive more revenue without having to really grow your team, you're able to do that with your current client base. You're really keeping one of your biggest expenses, which is payroll, still, right? While your revenue grows. So your revenue is growing, but your expenses are not growing at the same degree proportionally. So you're going to really boost your firm's profitability. A lot of the new dollar revenue coming in is going to fall down to the bottom line. And having more money allows you to reinvest more back into your firm for marketing, for growth. Maybe pay yourself a better salary. I mean, you could use it for so many different things. So it can really help drive a more profitable firm. And then lastly, is it's going to help you scale faster. So one of the biggest things we see, especially today with the job market environment and the great resignation, it's really hard for a lot of firms to find good talent. So by implementing automation, again, you're going to free up your current team's time. You're going to increase the amount of capacity your team can take on for work. So you're going to be able to grow without having to go out through that process of continuously hiring new people to meet that new client demand. the biggest bottleneck for firms when they start to grow and grow their client base is finding that talent, but not just finding that talent, onboarding them, training them, and getting them ready to be able to take on that work. It takes a lot of time. So by automating a lot of these processes, you can push that first hire or that second hire off at a later point when you have more clients, so you can scale faster. But also, as you continue to grow to 3, 5, 10, 20 people, you're not going to have to hire as often, because each person you hire will be able to take on more work than the average person before automation. So that bottleneck, you won't hit that troublesome process as fast. So these are some of the biggest benefits of automation, in my opinion. It saves you time, improves work quality, derives profitability, and just really helps you scale a lot faster. Let's see. So now we talked a little bit about why it's important, why you should implement automation, what are the benefits of it. Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges in implementing automation. The biggest ones we've seen from talking to firms is one, that it can be overwhelming, right? So like we talked about, in accounting firms, there's a lot of opportunity to automate many different repetitive or manual processes. If you really take some time and sit down and make a list of all the things you can automate, it's going to be a lot. And when you see that, sometimes firms say there's a lot to do here. They don't know where to start, and it can be a little overwhelming, so they kick it off down the road. Or even if they know, right, exactly what they're going to automate first, you Google how to, like, for example, scheduling calendars, right? You Google calendar scheduling app. There might be like 10 different apps that pop up. Then you get, distracted. You end up thinking you have to do 10 demos, do all this research, and it instantly becomes a really long process. So we're going to talk about how you can overcome that by really staying focused and following a framework to prevent that overwhelm. And the second thing is, even if you go through this process, right, you put all this time into it, and you implement the tech, the implementation fails because the rest of your team doesn't adopt the new tech. A lot of firms, there can be people where they're not as tech savvy, or they don't want to change the way they do things. So even after you go through this process, there is that risk, and that prevents a lot of people from implementing automation, or even if they try, it still fails. So seeing this and talking to firms, that's why we've built in this webinar, which is really going to get to the meat of this presentation, the Firm Automation Playbook. This is a step-by-step process that you can follow to overcome those challenges, so you don't get overwhelmed, to have a successful implementation, ensure your team will adopt it, but also really realize some of those benefits. So from our design, the Firm Automation Playbook consists of 6 steps, right? First, identify where you're spending your time. To really understand where you can automate, or where the biggest opportunities to automate are, you really need to know where your time is going. And you would be surprised where your time goes. When you're not thinking about it, you're spending a lot of time in some places you don't really realize. So first, identifying that and getting a clear guide of where your time is going is going to help you identify where to automate.
Is there a thing on there for how much time I'm spending on Twitter?
I don't know. I know you can check your phone for that. Oh, we got another person. Let's let them in. So the second one is define what can be automated. So after you really know where you're spending your time, not everything can be automated. So then you need to define what can be. And then 3, then once you know where your time is going, what can be automated, you need to identify the technology that you can use to automate those processes. What is the process for vetting and finding those technology solutions? 4 is to prioritize what to implement first. Like we said, you can't do it all at once. You need to pick one thing to focus on, implement it before you move on to the next. What is the process for figuring out what to do first? And then create a roadmap so that you can share it with your team, and you can have a clear guide that everyone can see, visibility for everyone to say, this is what we're going to be implementing. This is when we're going to start. This is when we're going to end. It gives your team visibility, more likely to accept it, but also it holds you and your firm accountable. And then lastly, which is the most important, how to successfully implement it and train your team to ensure adoption. So those are the 6 steps that go into the firm automation playbook that we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, so now I'm going to jump in again with a couple of ways to
Yeah.
implement some automations, although you're going to love the guide that Sharam did. One of the other things that we spend time on is pecking out notes over and over and over again. So there's a number of ways that you can automate that. One of them is the client communications, of course, in Financial Sense. One of them is to use text expanders, whether you use a Stream Deck. Some of you are in my Facebook group, so you know that I love my Stream Deck now. There's text expanders on your phone. There's text expanders for Chrome extensions. But there is one last way that you can do that, and that is to create a quick links document as well. So just a spreadsheet with a bunch of tabs. So one tab may have your scheduler links. One tab may have your Zoom thing. One may be social media for a tab. One may be client, like actual notes that go out to clients that say, hey, you know, HubDoc's not playing nicely with your bank, whatever the case may be. So there's all kinds of ways to create automation within. So we're about to talk about where do you spend your time. It's pecking out emails, because for a lot of us it is. Stream Deck, text expanders, Financial Sense for the client communications to get the stuff recurring, right? Auto nag, and a spreadsheet with those communications that you use all the time, or the links that you need for people all the time. Okay, away we go.
Perfect. So let's get started with the first step, identifying where you spend time, right? So
can I just answer Dominique's question super quick?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, and you guys can put your hands up and then ask a question live. So it's not just Sharam and me taking over Sharam. How do I segment my autoresponder automation, my pricing, and my proposal automation? At the start of your client onboarding in Financial Sense. We talked about this, Sharam, and I, links. So I don't, there are some things that I'm simply never going to automate. I need to see the responses from somebody before I'm even going to send them out pricing. And I do a file review. And so there is a file review in Financial Sense to make sure that you're getting to it. And then there are links to the document to complete for the client, and then through to questionnaire forms. Anything that I need to get to do the file review comes in and is automated to come in through Financial Sense. So I need their trial balance, I need their bank statements, all that. Those requests go out to them. And that's part of that. I automate the pricing portion of it because I have a link again. So the client task part can automatically ship out a request, or the note goes out, and then you can ask them, well, here you can put an everlasting invoice payment thing in there. So you can create those in all kinds of places where it's basically a pay link, pay me now kind of link. And then, so that automates that sort of portion of them. I link, so in the onboarding process, I link in questionnaires, but I don't do anything automatically until I have vetted those questionnaires. So, you know, you got to kind of look at what you're getting into. So some things are fully systemized, and then go ahead and automate the pieces that don't need that human element. That's so important. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point to add on to that. Like, before you automate, you kind of need to systematize everything and standardize it. So
and test the crap out of it.
And
in Financial Sense, when I was first using it, and I lacked the faith, because I test the crap out of any automated system, and I test the crap out of any new app that I put in. So I actually put myself in as a contact for my clients. So whenever they received a request to do something, I received that request. So I could see what their experience was like. Although I have test clients, I wanted to make sure that they were going out in a way that was meaningful to my clients. But that you need to be careful with the email with the email integration. If you are a contact, it will bring in your emails as well. So once you have faith that things are working well, take yourself out of your client file as a contact.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so back to step one, right? So before you start automating anything, you need to know where your time is going, right? By knowing where you're spending your time is going to help you see the biggest opportunities to automate. So what we recommend is spend a week. You can spend more than 1 week because every week is different, but we think you only need a week, and just sit down as you're working throughout that week, every single day, and write down where you're spending your time. So as you do something, write it down. I spent 5 minutes here. I spent 10 minutes here. Or if you don't want to write it down, use a time tracker. There's a lot of great time tracking tools out there. You can also track time in financial sense. But to really make it more seamless, tracking time, your time is great. I want to say this though, when you're recording, whether you're writing it down or you're tracking time, make sure you detail it out, right? So you might say, in a meeting, right? Make sure you specify in a meeting with who. Like, it could be with a team member, right? It could be with a client. Or let's say your emails, whether you're responding to emails or you're reading emails, or just try to be as detailed as possible, because or tie it to an activity or a process. So you can really see where your time is being spent on an actual process versus like spent 10 minutes talking to Bob. Who is Bob? Is he a client? So is it a client meeting? Right? So you can really understand and break that down. And that's going to be helpful when we start automating the processes. And then at the end of the week, after you've tracked all your time, sum it all up to see where your time is. And it's going to look something like this, right? So
I was going to say, do you have a way to do that, Sharon?
Yeah, we do actually. If you do track time in financial sense, we have reports that show you.
No, I meant, do you have a system that you're going to show us?
Oh yeah, this is my typical week, right? And I understand that every firm is different. So, and this is probably a simplistic version of what you would see. And let's be realistic, not a lot of accounting firms just work 40 hours a week, or firm owners at least. So, but this is just an illustration, right? This is to kind of give you an idea. So after the week, I summed everything up, and now I see where my time went, right? I'm spending 2 hours a week scheduling calls, 5 hours writing emails, another 5 hours chasing down my clients for information. I'm putting 6 weeks talking to clients in meetings, or 6 hours talking to clients, some time invoicing, and then I'm spending about half my week on payroll and half and bookkeeping, actually doing the work, right? So once you've created like your week, right, you have it laid out where your time is being spent. The next thing you're going to need to do is you're going to define what can be automated, right? You're going to look back at this and say, what in here can be automated? And really, when you're looking for things that can be automated, you're going to want to look for very repetitive or manual, but simple tasks. Something that doesn't create like need a lot of creative thinking, like a client meeting. You can't really automate a client meeting because you got to talk to the client, right? But there's a lot of things you can automate, like, and this is a list of some things like scheduling calls, right? Writing emails. You can use templates, so you don't have to rewrite. A lot of accounting firms send the same emails to all their different clients, right? Or emails for the same reasons, whether it's like a proposal request, whether it's a follow-up, again, chasing down clients for information, right? You're sending the same follow-up request to all your different clients. You can automate those follow-ups. You can automate those email templates. Reminders for your team, letting them know when certain things are due, right? Automatically when something becomes due in a few days, or when someone on your team finishes work and you need to review it, it automatically notifies you. These are all little things that can be automated, like, categorizing transactions, month-end reviews. We'll talk a little bit more about this. So, and then again, back to the list, you want to go back to your list, identify what can. So on my list, pretty much every piece or a part of every piece of my process can be automated, except for my client meetings. So now you need to really identify what tech you need. And this is a very important process. This is where a lot of people hit a wall. You know where you need to automate, you know where you're spending your time, but you go into Google and you say, okay, I want to start automating my meetings, right? Like Kelly was saying, like she does with her scheduling apps. Well, you type that in Google and you get 10 different apps. What happens is a lot of people, they get shiny object syndrome. They want to leave no stone left unturned. They do 10 different demos, and then they make a short list of 3 after thinking about it for a while. Then they do 3 different follow-up demos because you don't even remember what those 3 did after the 10 demos you did. And then you have to think about it some more and you make a decision. That's a long process. And it's easy to fall into that trap. But here's the thing. Again, accounting firm owners don't have time to do stuff like that. What happens is if you try to do that, you think you're going to do it, and then you say, I'm too busy this week, I'll do it next week, then I'll do it next month, then I'll do it next year, and then it just never happens. So what we recommend is you actually just lean on your colleagues, go to people or go to places that have already vetted these apps. Other accounting firms, just like you, have faced these problems. They have gone through this process. Lean on them and ask them what they're using. They may shortlist it down to 1 or 2 apps that you should look at. That saves you a lot of time. And that's why we've actually, after our experience of working with firms, created something we like to call the Firm Automation Tech Stack. By the way, we're going to be sending, this tech stack, all these models and frameworks to you in an Excel spreadsheet or a sheet after the webinar. So you can look at the tech stacks. You can use these same frameworks to walk through this process and guide you through it. So you will be getting all of these resources. But this is an example, right? This is what we call the Firm Automation Tech Stack that we created after talking to hundreds of firms. What apps were they most likely recommending? What partners we worked with that they've recommended they use? And this can really save you a lot of time and narrow it down to just 1 or 2 apps to look at and focus on. So like scheduling calls, Acuity. I use Streak for writing my email templates, creating client work. So like you do a lot of repetitive payroll or monthly bookkeeping, recreating that and copying that in Excel every single month and re-delegating to someone, that takes time. You can automate that with recurring projects in financial sense. Chasing down information, month-end review process. Use something like auto review to automate that review. That will save you hours. So all these different things that you can, tech opportunities that you can use, but you can use our tech stack, or you can ask a friend, ask a colleague in the space. And just to kind of like hit home, like the type of value this can have. So like we just implemented a few things from here in my typical work week example. And it shows from this example, you're saving 16 hours a week. You went from working 40 to 24 to doing the same amount of work, right? And this may be different for different firms, but there's so much opportunity to automate. If you use a scheduler for calls, you don't have to schedule calls anymore. Those add up. If you're scheduling, 1 or 2, 3 calls a day, doing that back and forth, that time adds up really quick. You can automate that completely from start to finish. You never have to chase down your clients if you use an automated request list and follow up. Bookkeeping work, you can save a lot of time on your bookkeeping and your month-end closes by doing the auto review or using a tech to help run payroll in a more seamless process. I mean, what would you do, right? If you were saved 16 hours every single week, that's 2 extra days a week, right? What would you do with that? That's, if you look at it in the working hours, that's 5 months out of the year saved. That means you could almost double the amount of clients you have now, or you could take a sabbatical. You go on a really long vacation.
Can I come back to the bookkeeping automation?
Yeah.
Because I know some of you have had to listen to me yap on about some things. I apologize. And you may know that I don't automate the bank feeds. So this is where systemizing something creates almost an automation. So in the bank feeds, I don't automate them because the what could go wrong is greater than the benefit of the time saved. So you always need to balance that out. If what happens is worse than the benefit you receive from an automation, then that's an issue. But systemizing it can somehow almost create the feel of automation.
Yeah.
So in the bank feed, setting up the bank rules, sorting, filtering, getting stuff out of your visual, and then being able to click off 40, 50 transactions at once because you've gone to Uber, you know what it is. So you've filtered by Uber, you filtered maybe by a date range, you can click them all off at once and ship them off. That doesn't sound like it's automation, but I would consider that an automation win because it's coming in for me. And then all it takes is a couple of sort filters and batch click and ship off. So be careful about the outcome you're trying to achieve and what the automation is going to do to muck with that. Mm-hmm. But having a system can create what feels like automation.
Yeah, definitely. The systematizing is key, whether you're just trying to make your progress more, your process more productive,
Mhm.
but it also lays the framework. Because, like, for example, scheduling calls, you can automate from start to finish, but something like bookkeeping work, there's so many different components, but once you systematize it and you break it down into steps, you can identify parts of that process that you can automate, right?
Yep. And in financial sense, you can put in all the description of the things that you need to do to make sure that you are clearing those bank feeds quickly. And the other thing that I do in my lists is I actually list out as subtasks how many accounts need to be cleared and then how many accounts need to be reconciled, so that we're not missing a beat on that. But I will say I do use the recurring work, the automated recurring work in financial sense heavily. And that is an automation that there's a big win. But again, keep an eye on it. Everything can't just be willy-nilly. Automation is running your world and you don't need to have some sort of backup plan. So a backup plan to automation could look a little bit like this. You have the recurring work automatically showing up and being assigned to workers in financial sense. But on my calendar, I also have a calendar that just shows, in Canada, we have a VAT tax. It shows my HST cycles. It shows my payroll cycle, and it shows my client year ends or any other important milestones. That's not a calendar that links to my schedule or anything. That's a calendar so that when I go in, I have automation running in financial sense on what my recurring work is. But I also have a backup redundancy plan that I have another visual on it, especially when you are in the beginning phases and you're trying to build trust in your automations. Make sure that you have some sort of redundancy on them. I also did go in and realize I didn't check off anything from a file that was in October that I had done it. So, I could be a dink, even though I have all of this in place, right? I'm like, how did I miss that? Well, because I'm a dink. It was done. I just didn't check it off. So don't be like Kelly.
Okay. So let's go on to the next point. So now that you know where you've identified where you're spending your time, right? You've identified what can be automated. And now you know the technology you want to use to automate each process. You've got everything narrowed down. You've got it all ready to go. Well, the next thing you need to do is you need to prioritize what to implement first. Remember how we talked about one of the biggest challenges is that it gets really overwhelming when you just try to do everything at once. There's so many opportunities to automate. If you try to do it all at once, you are not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to implement it successfully because you're going to have trouble digesting it and learning it, but especially your team, So the best way to be successful is to prioritize what to implement first and then implement one thing at a time. You implement one thing, once it's implemented successfully, then you can move on to the next. Don't try to throw 2 or 3 new solutions at your team because it's going to cause it to fail out the gate. So
can I throw in? Well, of course I'm going to.
So
the other thing is, so I don't have a big team anymore. It's Marissa and I. When I was whenever I implement new technology, I run it past her first. So engaging your team in the change that you're about to make or an automation you're about to implement is so important. And a why. So it's not just implementing it. It's not just engaging them in it. It's saying, here's why we're going to do this. Because sometimes automation for employees feels like you're working them out of a job. So make sure that maybe they get to do more interesting work rather than you're not scheduling my calls anymore, or you're not going to toggle all of the client work on at the beginning of every month. That's gonna be automated here, and they're gonna go, well, what am I gonna do all day? And we're seeing that. I mean, there was a big sea change when the apps like Dext and HubDoc came in, and people are like, well, I'm going to lose my job here. No, you're not going to lose your job. You're going to shift what you do. So make sure you're engaging any stakeholders in, you're going to shift what you're going to do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And we'll talk about that a little more in the later part of the process. Um, so when you get to, now you need to prioritize, but how do you know what to prioritize first, right? Do you go after the biggest time savings opportunities, or do you go after the things that are the easiest to implement first? And this can be hard to decide. And what we recommend is that you tackle the things that are the easiest to implement first. Because what that's going to allow you to do is, one, that's going to allow you to understand what the process is like. That's going to allow you, you're going to make a few mistakes at first, right? You're going to get familiar with the process, but also your team, the people you have to convince to adopt this new technology, it's going to be a lot easier to get them to implement something very simple. They're going to see that value, and they're going to be more open to other things in the future. You're going to build that momentum that's going to make it easier to implement some of the more tough solutions, the things that are really going to change the way they do things. But if they've had some experience and exposure to adopting new solutions and seeing that value already, you're going to have a lot more success in the future. So to help you kind of prioritize this, we built this framework. And this, again, we're going to share this with everyone after the webinar, so you can kind of do this on your own. That kind of breaks it down for you, right? So we have 4 quadrants. And then the first thing you want to do is, first, you want to tackle the things that are easy to automate, but save you the most time. And then you want to tackle the easy to automate that save you the least time. And then you'll move on to the things that are hard. So then you go on the hard to automate, more time, and then the hard to automate that save you less time, save those for last. So like if we go back to like my typical work week and apply that to this priority matrix, it's going to look something like this. So things that are easy to automate, just setting up automated requests. Okay, that's going to save me 5 hours. I'm going to do that first. Also something, the email templates, that's going to save me 3 hours. We'll do that second. Scheduling, setting that up is very easy, but it's going to save me a little less time than the other things that are easy to automate. So I'm going to put that in the other quadrant. And you follow that framework, and now you have a good priority of the things you need to tackle first. So once you've kind of organized them in the 4 quadrants, you prioritize what you want to automate, and you have the order, then, like Kelly said, you want to create a roadmap, something that you can give your team and gives them visibility into what they're going to be implementing and what the automation is and what the framework looks like. So we have this automation roadmap where it talks about the process that's going to be automated. Then it shows the technology we're going to use. Now, whether it's you or someone else on the team, you need to have someone responsible. This is important because there has to be accountability, and not 2 people. Multiple people will be involved in the process, but there's got to be one person that owns it and champions it, because they're going to be accountable for getting it done. If you say, hey, we're all just going to do this together, everyone's going to point fingers like, well, I thought he was going to do that, or she was going to do that, or I didn't know I was supposed to do that. You need to have one person to run the process. And then you need to put estimated timelines to keep.
You have to have a cheerleader.
Yeah. There we go. She's our implementation cheerleader. And then you want to put timelines, right? Put a start date and a finish date. You may not be right at first. You're going to, once you implement some of the easy things, you're going to get a better idea, and then you can update it. But this will help your team really understand what's coming on the horizon. It'll help them feel like they're a part of the process, and it's going to ensure that more successful implementation. It's just going to give them that visibility everyone needs to know what's coming up. So once you've really got your automation plan, right, your roadmap in place, next, it's really going to come down to implementation and training your team. This is where most firms fail, right? They go through this whole process, and then they just throw the solution at their team. Maybe they put on an email, they say, hey, we're going to start using this tool. Make sure you download it, sign up, and start using it. That's not the way to do it, right? You really need to get your team's buy-in. You need to educate them. So what we recommend is getting the team together, doing something like a lunch and learn, pay for everyone's lunch, whether it's on a Zoom meeting or in person, get everyone together and talk about why this is important. How is this new tech that we're going to implement to automate your firm, or this new process, going to make their lives easier? What is the value they're going to get from it? It's going to save them time. Explain it to them. Show them the before and after effects so they really understand the buy-in. Then once they see the value, you need to help them understand how to use it. This is where, they want to use it, right? But they just can't figure it out. They don't and it's causes too much friction, it's too much of a pain point than just doing it the old way, right? Because it's just frustrating. Spend time, walk through the product with them, do a demo for your whole team, or better yet, have a representative at the tech company, the company, the technology using, to do it for your team, so you don't have to do it yourself. You know, we offer free demos and training to all teams that are interested in our product. So it's not uncommon to get one of the representatives to do a demo for your team, answer any questions they have. That's
Actually,
going to help them hit the ground running.
there's a trust building portion of that too. So one of the things, so some of these apps, and I'm trying not to mention financial sense too much, but it's what I use. In the beginning, I had notifications coming into my email so that I could build up trust that if I asked it to automate something, I knew that it had. If a client had sent me something, I knew it had come in. I needed to, and your team may need to build that trust in the application and the process and the automation. But after a while, once you've built that trust, you are now like emailing yourself notifications so you get yourself out of email is a little self-defeating. So then one of the next steps you need to do is have a way to help your team members, and I do this for my clients too, build out almost an automation that makes the app you want them to use a part of their day and easy to get into. So some of you know that I use the Chrome browser, and I use identities for accounting. And then I have 4 startup pages. And so I do that. Marissa has exactly the same setup as me, so that when she goes to open her accounting browser in the morning, Financial Sense and QuickBooks and Dext, all of the things she needs all pop open as automated starting pages. And then you get into the habit of working out of the app that's to take you out of email. So then use the notifications that are actually in app. The only time I automate something now to send that I send a reminder to my email is if I am doing project work and it's really hustle and bustle and I actually need to be a part of the bookkeeper booty call, I have a notification that comes in when my client uploads something, and that comes into my email. Now I only check my email a couple of times a day too, but that is so that I have a secondary awareness of an urgent thing that may have come into me that I needed to do something with. So make it easy for your clients or for your team members to use the application that you want them to use. Create an automated process for them within their Chrome browser. That's a whole other talk, but.
And I saw a comment come in that I really liked by Alyssa about, you know, really explaining what's going to change and what's going to stay the same. Not just talking about how it's going to make their lives easier or how you're going to use it, but that's a really good point. You know,
That's
I
a
didn't
great
think
point.
about.
Super great.
You know, it's really important to remove all like confusion from the scenario, right? By saying what exactly is going to stay the same and what specifically is going to change. We'll leave room for no doubt, no confusion, and remove friction from this type of process. So, and really okay, this is actually another point that I didn't get to. So we talked about doing the demo of your team, training them on the product, right? That's important so they can understand it. They don't have that big learning curve, which makes them not adopt the solution. But what you want to do next is do a follow-up meeting, like a week or 2 or 3 after, just depending on the solution. Give them time to use the product or the new tech, and then come back, do a follow-up meeting, see who's implemented it, who hasn't, right? Understand, ask them why. Are there concerns? Are there problems? Maybe they just, you know, one demo is not always enough, right? You can't soak it all in at once if it's a pretty complex implementation. Retrain them, help them get over that hump, and do as many of those you have to do until everyone on your team is on it. It's going to help hold your team accountable, right? Because they're going to know you're serious about it, and you're going to keep having meetings until it gets done. But also, it really helps you tackle the problems that are preventing them from implementing it. Because once you get in a solution, there's always more questions. There's always things they didn't think about. You know, it's like not understanding how to do something, and you can tackle that if you actually smoke it out, you talk about it, and you work through it.
Like, are we actually smoking it out? Because here in Canada, smoking it out is legal now.
Don't.
Can I throw in like a quick thing that's like a system versus an automation win?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's dashboard views, and again, it's in Financial Sense. But so I've created all of those different views that I can automatically toggle to, but I have the dashboard view that I go into so that when I open Financial Sense, and Marissa created this too, when I go into Financial Sense, I don't have to toggle anything. It automatically opens into the view that I want. So sometimes those automation wins are only going to save you a few minutes here and there, but they are like, why would I have to do this wins? It just
Yeah.
takes a pain in the ass right off your list. There's no reason you should have to do that. If there is a view you want every day, when you open that up, just have it set.
Yeah, having visibility like that's important, because if it's not top of mind, it could be forgotten. It could be missed, right?
And it's like the Chrome startup pages. It just automatically, so not only do my Chrome pages all start up, those 4 pages that I need, but some of them actually have the view that I want, including Financial Sense. So it's not just about things like the online scheduler or my Stream Deck, which I just push little buttons. It's also about all those tiny little wins of the crap you really don't need to do anymore all day long.
Yeah, definitely agree. So in a nutshell, that's everything, right? So that's the firm automation playbook. And I'm actually going to share this real quick in the chat. So I've got the link, so you guys can go view and download these frameworks, and that will walk you through the process. So you guys have the opportunity to do this and implement it for yourself. We'll also send a follow-up email, but go ahead and click that link if you are still here. And so let's recap that, right? What is the firm automation playbook? For step 1, identify where you're spending your time so you can identify the opportunities to automate, define what can and cannot be automated. Then, once you know where your time is being spent, what can be automated, find the technology and have a way to quickly vet it so you know what you can use to automate those processes. Prioritize what to implement first, because you can't do it all at once. And to really be successful, you have to focus on one thing, implement it, get that win, build that momentum, and move on to the next thing when you successfully have completed that. 5, create the automation roadmap so your team has visibility, they have buy-in, they understand what's going to be happening. And 6, implement and train your team. Explain the value, show them how they're going to use it, explain what will change and what will not change, and then have a follow-up meeting or 2 or 3, however many it takes, to retrain the people that didn't get it the first time around, or figure out what concerns they're having, why they're not implementing, so you can tackle it and get everyone on board.
Okay, if you're having trouble with the link, open up a browser and it'll open up the browser and you can download it from the browser. Did
it work for you, Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Make sure I shared the right link. So again, what are the benefits, right? Why do you want to follow Playbook? Why do you want to implement automation in your firm? One is it's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to give you time to focus on more important things like growing your firm or taking a vacation so you don't burn out. It's going to help improve work quality at scale. As you grow, as you hire new team members, it's going to remove that aspect of human error. So you're getting consistent client deliverables for your clients. Your clients are getting consistent experience, which keeps them happy. So you retain them and impresses them, so they refer you new business, which again is the biggest growth driver for accounting firms, referrals. 3, it increases your firm profitability. You'll be able to take on more clients because you have more time without growing your expenses, which will make a more profitable firm, because every dollar of new revenue that's going to come in after that point will fall more to the bottom line. And 3, it's going to help you scale faster. The biggest bottleneck for scaling your firm is finding talent, especially in today's market. And not just that, it's training and onboarding that talent. By saving more time, allowing your team to take on more work, each accountant you hire or staff member you hire will be able to do more work after automation than before, so you don't have to go through that bottleneck as much. And so just to top it off, some best practices and really things to take away, right? Start as soon as possible. You know, a lot of people, they wait to automate when it becomes a problem. When it's a problem, it's too late, right? You want to get in front of it. And also it's better to start early when it's a smaller firm, maybe it's just you and someone else, because it becomes part of your firm's DNA. If you wait till you have 5 or more or several team members, they're going to get in the habit of doing something a certain way. And then when you try to change it after the fact, it's a lot harder after they're in their ways of doing something than if they come into the firm and this is the way you do it and this is the way you train them. So start earlier. It may take some time, but it'll pay off 10x in the future. Don't spend too much time researching. Don't get distracted. Talk to, you know, colleagues in the space, see what apps they're using. They've already vetted it. They've already been through this process. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, or use our firm automation tech stack that is in that link that you can use. Don't try to do it all at once. Break it off piece by piece. It'll make it easy for your team to digest. It'll give you those small wins that build momentum for the bigger things, and take time to train your team. Train them on how to do it. Show them the value. Follow up. Address any concerns until it gets implemented successfully. And that's the webinar. So, you know, we got 3 minutes here. We won't really go into the whole, this is how Financial Sense does it for you portion. We've already talked about FC a lot. I see there's a lot of questions coming into the chat. We can, oh, these are just about the links.
Yep, it's all,
But
it may just be a computer issue. It may be an individual computer issue that we might not be able to solve, but it's gonna ship out to you afterwards.
Yep. So if anyone has any questions, we'll open the floor to questions. If not, if you want to learn more about Financial Sense, I'm glad I talked to you about how FC can help you automate your firm or streamline your workflows and track the status of client work. But, you know, with such little time, I'd love to just cover any questions that people may have about things we talked about, or just any questions they may have.
Can I go with if not, go ahead and ask questions. If somebody has questions, that would be way more fun than me talking. But I have a question if you don't.
I have a question about where do you store the files? Because right now my biggest pain point is I asked for the files, but I'd really like to have a really simple way of sharing those files. And I wonder how Financial Sense does it. Liscio has something interesting, but right now my files are all over the place. My personal tax files go into a tax cycles tax folder. The other ones, you know, they're in a variety of decks, a Google Drive.
I'm going to give you the quick version on this, Dominic. First of all, create a matrix for you and your clients of where stuff is going to go. So, you know, receipts, source documents for bookkeeping, they go to Dex. There's no question about that. Sales invoices out of QBO, they are automatically BCC. When you email the invoice to the client, or they invoice it to their customer, it is BCC'd into their Dex. Create a matrix of where you are going to find those documents to be most useful. And where you are going to manage those documents is really going to depend on the complexity and client load that you have. So if your client load is fairly light and not complex, so I just do bookkeeping, I don't do tax. If I need something directly related to a project, I can request that through Financial Sense. If it has to have more legs to it and you need to interact on the client with it, then perhaps that is when Liscio comes into play, or when you're using ShareFile or one of these things. It depends on what you're going to do with it. But again, create that matrix of where are you actually going to use that document. So Dominic, I believe you do taxes, don't you?
Yeah, I do tax. The biggest pain point for me is all the tax, you know, because I do personal proprietorships, corporate, and I do CRA review defense and stuff like that.
So you can pick some of those stuff up in Financial Sense because they relate directly to a project. You are doing a tax return. every single thing you need from the client can actually come into there. And it can actually start with a T1, Dominique is Canadian. So T1
Mhm.
organizer or personal tax organizer for my American friends. It starts with an organizer that actually is a link in the client tasks. So create that in type form, well, or cognito forms, whatever the case may be. Create your organizer and have that as a link in the client task that it goes out to them and says, fill this darn thing out. And then upload your documents here. And they come in, and then you've got everything you need for that tax return project right there in the file.
So does,
But you need to create this matrix. This is where you need to.
I understand that. So does Financial Sense then support the app itself, so they can open up like a Google sheet or
Yep.
an Excel or
Yep.
a PDF with, and then they can fill out the form?
Yep, and then you're going to need a notification that the form is filled out.
So
But
it would need to be like a Google Doc or a Google form or a Google, you can't
Yeah.
actually like, they can't they would be able to download the PDF, edit it and re-upload it, but they can't actually.
No, I'm going with Kelly Park. So our
Okay.
client stuff is going to Google Workspace because of the
Okay.
ease of sharing with Google Sheets and stuff
Okay.
like that. Besides
So-
which, most clients don't want to learn Excel and Word.
Right. Okay. So yeah, whatever the process is, whether it's a Word document or a Google Doc, whatever the case may be, you can link everything in the client tasks. But what I'm saying is, if you need all of those tax documents uploaded into one place where you're actually going to check off the list of work that you're going to do, then Financial Sense is your answer. But here's another scenario. I actually want client bank statements, because some of them, not shocking anybody, don't get picked up anymore. I want my clients to actually upload bank statements into Dext. They know that, because I need them for now and evermore, related to all client work, not related to a single project. And that way they are automatically downloading into a folder that they control, so they always have their source documents, location redundancy, and take me out of the picture. So create your matrix of how much access the client is going to need, again, how much legs this document needs to have. Is it just for a single project, or is it going to be used over and over again? So,
and then do they have to have a Dex login like Lizio and was it
Yes.
Sync and all that? They require, okay. And a lot of my clients would much prefer to do this on a tablet or a phone
Yep.
than on a computer. So
It's all fine.
They can do all of that.
They can do all of that, but that like the whole Dext HubDoc piece is an entirely
Right. I use Dext and I use HubDoc. I like
Okay,
them both,
okay.
but okay. So but then what I'm missing is all the back and forth. Now, is there SMS? So I could use, do I need to use Lizio for that? Because I'm telling you,
Lizio doesn't do
people
SMS.
don't email me anymore. Everybody's texting me.
Yeah, okay, so Lizio doesn't do, and not to get into the weeds of all the other apps, Lizio also does not do SMS. Because a lot of the communications need to be secure beyond the ability of an iPhone or a whatever. So,
Okay.
I mean, once you are into the space where you're, I mean, so
I have
Lizio-
some grandfathered shoebox clients, and I'm trying to figure out. So part of my brain is saying, and so all my new clients are only online and paperless, but
Right.
these grandfathered shoebox guys, I was wondering if I can teach them anything, but it sounds like it's not going to happen. It's going to
No.
stay shoebox.
It's not going to do in the case of a shoebox. There's just too much for the client to scan and get into an app, and it's no, that's
Okay.
gonna,
Okay. So then paperless people, they'll shovel the stuff into Dext and a HubDoc will pull. What about my
HubDoc's not fetching anymore, but yep,
It's not fetching anymore?
no, fetching's gone.
Oh dear. What about my Dropbox people? Is there a Dropbox? I've got some people who are diehard Dropbox and don't want to do anything else.
No,
And
so the workaround on that, Dominique, is for those clients, when you set up the workflow specifically, so you're going to have these overall workflows and they're going to have the client communications as a part of it. And that process is automated. But once you get a new client, and if they have a process that's outside of the norm, you can create a template just for them that actually has the Dropbox link in it. And you say, put your documents here, and then you go get them because using the same link that's within the client file. There's a client vault in Financial Sense that would solve some of these things for you. But again, that's now we're into the like real inner workings of the product itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Awesome presentation. Extremely timely for me.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right. I think
Oh,
that's
then
everyone.
I have one question. Can I do an
Yeah.
automation win? Super fun automation win. On my phone. And you can look this up, or I have a blog on it. I think it's Automations I Love or Automations You'll Love, something. If you haven't set up text expanders on your iPhone or on your iPad or anything or Android anything, just look up text replacement or go to my blog and look up Automations You'll Love. And text expanders are insanely time saving on your phone. So it looks like this. I have one, the word, I just put in the word, it says emptied. And then it pecks out an entire phrase automatically that says, I emptied the dishwasher, thumbs under my armpits, because it's a thing with my husband and I. I have one for my son, and it just says when. It's got a little code at the beginning, so I don't just every time I say when, it expands. It says when. It's like, when are you going to call your mother? I haven't talked to you in a while, whatever the case may be. So you can just pack in a character and a couple of things, and away you go with text expanders on your phone. Huge automation win.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Kelly, for that. So it looks like we ran a little over, but I guess we'll just end the webinar. We'll send everyone a recording after the fact. If you came in late, I saw a few people dropped in a little late, but you'll be receiving that so you can see everything you missed. And we'll include the link if you haven't downloaded the frameworks yet already.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care. Let's see.